Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the 2021 Reentry Week webinar, Using Distance-Based Child-Parent Engagement Strategies in Correctional Facilities. My name is Valerie Carpico, and I am a Senior Policy Analyst at the Council of State Governments Justice Center. This event will be recorded and posted online for training purposes. During Reentry Week, the National Reentry Resource Center will be your home for resources and virtual events. Joining me today as presenters are Milo Dietrich, Corrections Program Manager at the Pathfinder Network, Lisa Hall, Case Management Administrator at the Oregon Department of Corrections, Sherry Sandoval, Director of Correction Programs at the Pathfinder Network, Brandy Harrison, Project Manager, Forensic Services, Allegheny Department of Human Services, and Amy Kroll, Administrator of Reentry Services at the Allegheny County Jail. Additionally, I would like to welcome my colleague, Erica Nelson, also with the Council of State Governments Justice Center, and Kathy Mitchell and James Smith with OJJDP, who will be joining us for the question and answer session at the end of today's webinar. The Second Chance Act supports state, local, and tribal governments and nonprofit organizations in their work to reduce recidivism and improve outcomes for people leaving incarceration. The Second Chance Act has supported over $500 million in reentry investments across the country since it passed in 2008. The Second Chance Reauthorization Act passed in 2018 and continues to build on the strengths of the initial landmark legislation. The Council of State Governments Justice Center mission is to develop research-driven strategies to increase public safety and strengthen communities. We are one of 4 technical assistance providers for Second Chance Act programs. Our focus is on behavioral health, housing, and family supports. This includes technical assistance for the Second Chance Act grants tracks listed on this slide as well as the next slide, which include the grant track we will speak about today, addressing the needs of incarcerated parents and their minor children. Today, for our agenda, the presenters will provide an overview of their grant programs, including using distance-based child-parent engagement strategies in correctional facilities. Also, the presenters will provide a brief overview of their programs, including navigating restrictions and policy changes during changes due to the current COVID pandemic. Following our webinar today, there will be a question and answer session. The Addressing Needs of Incarcerated Parents and Their Minor Children grant program provides funding to support states and units of local governments to develop activities that foster positive family engagement between incarcerated parents within detention and correctional facilities and their children who are under the age of 18. The program also supports the children of incarcerated parents by providing services that reduce the likelihood of antisocial behaviors and future involvement in the juvenile justice system. Some of the key objectives include providing support to facilities for staffing, equipment, tools, and resources to create child-friendly spaces within detention and correctional facilities. Also, another objective is to develop safety protocols and procedures for children who are visiting their incarcerated parents. Developing programs and services that support the needs of parents and their children while the parent is incarcerated and as the parent transitions to the community from correctional custody. Now, without further ado, I would like to turn it over to our first presenter, Lisa Hall.
Thank you, Val. Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Hall, and I am the Correctional Case Management Administrator for the Oregon Department of Corrections, and I'm happy to share our experience here in Oregon. Our Parenting Inside Out, PIO Phase 2 Enhanced Visiting Pilot Project is an advanced skills development and parenting child visiting program that builds upon the evidence-based Parenting Inside Out curriculum. For those of you who may not be aware, Parenting Inside Out was developed in 2002 in collaboration with the Oregon Department of Corrections and the Oregon Social Learning Center. The program is a nationally recognized cognitive behavioral parenting training program. It is the only evidence-based parenting skills training program developed for parents involved in the criminal justice system. The PIO2 program is a strength-based and takes a holistic approach. The program supports incarcerated parents in developing parenting skills and working towards parenting goals. The program also provides support, materials, and resources for children and caregivers. The program goals are to increase communication between the parent and child to enhance that relationship. It is also to increase positive family engagement and create positive memories. And the program is also to mitigate the impact of parental incarceration on children and to enhance safety within the institutions for adults in custody and our correctional staff. The project scope and population served, and this of course is prior to the pandemic of March of 2020. Before then, the PIO Phase 2 was operating in 2 sites, Oregon's only women's facility, Coffee Creek Correctional Institution located in Wilsonville, Oregon, and one men's institution located in Salem, Oregon, which is the Santiam Correctional Institution, a minimum facility. The program served PIO graduates whose children age 18 or younger could attend the monthly enhanced in-person visits. PIO Phase 2 was focused on monthly enhanced visits for the incarcerated parent and their children, group parenting workshops, and once a month one-on-one coaching and children and caregiver support sessions. Now, I would like to introduce Sherry Sandoval, the Director of Corrections Program for the Pathfinders Network, and she will be taking us through some more experiences with our program.
Hello, I'm going to talk a bit about the pause and pivot that we experienced when COVID came to visit us in March of 2020. So there was a 2-month pause in our programming where visiting was suspended, and currently visiting continues to be suspended. So this caused us to do a pause and a pivot for our in-person programming. And we also had experienced some wildfires in Oregon. I'm sure many of you saw that on as it was national news, and it was caused an evacuation for the Oregon Department of Corrections that they've never had happen before in the history of the system. So it really threw a wrench into our in-person programming. So we really did a pause and worked to figure out how do we move forward. So the temporary use of Department of Corrections legal call line and the adult in custody phone system was our first line of defense in staying connected and keeping the program running. Our in-person classroom materials, we converted to packets and delivered them through the DOC's mail system, and actually through that actual regular mail system. We've mailed in some envelopes following the Oregon Department of Corrections mail system, and how much mail could be received through that method. And then we increased contact with the caregivers and children through our own Zooms or video visits or that way, so that we could keep that connection. And now I'm going to turn it over to Milo Dietrich, who is our program manager for PIO Phase 2. And he's going to take us through what the model looks like right now as we're in this pause and pivot. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry, so much. So yeah, as Sherry has said, I feel like we've done a fair amount of pausing and pivoting, and our current model is really focusing primarily on individualized one-on-one interventions and curriculum. And the format for this is through weekly video coaching, in-person coaching when we're allowed access, and the introduction of a bound participant workbook that individuals or groups are able to use. When we were, meeting in groups before the pandemic, so much of what we were doing was just happening in the classroom in that group setting. And we hadn't created some of those accompanying materials that would allow folks to kind of go inward and work through the program tools and learning opportunities when they didn't have access to classmates or they didn't have access to a coach. So accompanied with that, to kind of stand in for, certainly not replace, but stand in for the enhanced in-person visits that the program was built around, we've been able to institute weekly video visits between incarcerated parents and their kiddos. We've also been able to expand our pool from the initial 2 sites that Lisa had outlined, Coffee Creek and Santiam, to be able to serve more parents who who perhaps aren't able to have an in-person visit, since that wasn't a requirement in this current incarnation. So as we're looking at moving forward, here in Oregon, we know that in some cases that'll be in person, and in some cases that'll still be from a distance. And we found that some of the best practices that we've been identifying really are going to be applicable in both settings. And there've definitely been some silver linings for us in operating remotely and trying to find options for parents and children to connect from a distance that we find are going to carry over into our in-person programming as well. So when it comes to the one-on-one coaching that we've been doing, you see here a picture of one of our coaches who's actually having a coaching session with an incarcerated parent using the workbook that I mentioned. And I think, one thing that is just shining really bright for us is the importance of acknowledging the pandemic. We know that we're not in a business as usual reality, and our participants aren't either. And so just simply acknowledging, hey, this is where we are, this is what's happening, and really partnering with that parent as you go to, being curious about new ideas for how the program could be successful. And walking together to prepare for changes that we might not know what the changes will be, but we know that they're going to come. And along with that, keeping it simple. Like if you know that you're going to have a few different pathways depending on what's happening, have it be just really simple and clear, so that when you're not on site, that parent knows what to expect and what to do. And all of this kind of goes in that bucket of using a trauma-informed lens as you're thinking about programming. When it comes to, moving forward, as we're talking about supporting the engagement between the parent and the child, again, that trauma-informed lens is just proving to be so important for us. Just recognizing what it means to not be able to have an in-person visit for over a year. What it means when you get on a call and you're talking about a family member who might have COVID, or you're talking about not being able to go to school in person anymore. There's just a lot, that's in that mix that when we applied for our grant really wasn't in our mind's eye or our landscape of what kind of things are we going to be supporting children and parents and families through. This wasn't on our radar. And so more than anything, I think recognizing the importance of individualizing what we offer and really offering choice points within our programming, knowing that different families are in different situations and are going to have different needs right now. Another important piece of that, is really working on that self-care and self-regulation piece for parents, because when we were having our enhanced visits, we really were able to wrap around that parent before and after the visit, to ensure that they were processing it, that they were taking healthy steps for themselves after. And so knowing that so often we're not going to be in the room anymore, just kind of what guardrails can we put up and how can we help that parent and child prepare for those transitions? And I think also, a note here is celebrating those milestones. And so recognizing that sometimes the wins that we're going to have are going to be small, or they may feel small or look small to us. But really that these are some, magical foundational moments that are happening in the lives of these parents and these children, and really just calling them forward and staying in the moment of those milestones can be really impactful. And I think finally, when talking about as we move forward, kind of our best practices, when we're talking about, connecting with caregivers and children themselves as a program, and initially going in, we were supporting families in coming for these in-person visits and preparing them, beforehand and supporting them after. And when that's not a part of the mix, again, so much of what we're doing is that individualization, staying curious about what's working for the family, what supports they might need, what creative solutions they have. And I think a big piece for us too is just that showing of gratitude and grace, knowing that these caregivers and children are carrying so much and going through things that are hard for us to even wrap our minds around. And so, really, working with those caregivers as, beloved program partners, more than they are recipients of services. These are folks that are doing the most important work with these kiddos. And so really celebrating them for that. This picture I just want to highlight for a moment, kind of in that spirit of creating opportunities for reflection and feedback. This is a photo of a father having a video visit with his son on his birthday, and grandma there has set up that visit. They have a beautiful cake. And this is a dad that was really struggling to find ways to have meaningful engagement over video visit. And over the course of the program has just become so confident and excited about how he can play tic-tac-toe with his son, how they can, play tag over video visit in ways that are creative. And so just, having moments where we're just acknowledging these good things that are happening is important. So now I'd like to pass the mic back over to Sherry Sandoval, who's going to speak a little bit to considerations for distance-based programming in general.
Thank you, Milo. So through this process, from our original grant to our kind of pause and pivot, we've had a lot of eye-opening experiences, and would like to offer up some of the considerations that we all have processed through. We've been very lucky to have a wonderful working partnership between the Oregon Department of Corrections and the Pathfinder Network. So many of these considerations were very much a collaborative effort between the two agencies. And so some of those things are just ensuring system design and capacity, resource allocation and security features, contractual obligations and restrictions, any necessary grant modifications and alternative funding sources, participant identity, culture, language, and learning styles, institutional culture, and partners and stakeholders. And a lot of this just really heightens what Milo just spoke to about our current situation and kind of the being open to new ideas and different ways of doing things. But it definitely brought in a whole new element of things we needed to consider, as our original grant was written, with what we could do and what was feasible and what we had already been doing through other programs at that time. But with the COVID coming in and being a major partner in the last year, it has meant that we've had to lean on each other more to make these pivots. And so these are just some of the highlighted areas that we've realized really should be considered before you even attempt to make any kind of pivot. As we kind of got them, periodically through the pivot, we came up against technical issues with phone systems and how to make that work, and just basically people's, families' way of living. And some of them don't have computers and have access to video visits. And so there's just a lot of things you don't really take into consideration when you're really trying to pivot quickly and continue that, parent-child relationship building. So definitely want to give you some of our bumps in the road to consider before, to maybe help with that. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Val.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation and the great work you guys are doing and able to highlight for others nationwide. So appreciated. Without further ado, I will turn it over to Allegheny County, who as well has a fantastic program. And Brandy will go ahead and kick it off for us.
Hi, thanks, Val. We truly appreciate this opportunity to share what we've been doing in our county and also learn from the experiences of others. My name is Brandy Harrison. I'm a project manager with Allegheny County Department of Human Services in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I coordinate and facilitate communication amongst the partners for our Children of Incarcerated Parents grant. The Family Support Program at the Allegheny County Jail is a partnership between the Allegheny County Jail Collaborative, which DHS is a part of, the Allegheny County Jail Reentry Program, and Pittsburgh Mercy, who's our contracted service provider. Joining me on the call today is Amy Kroll. She is the administrator of our jail reentry programs. You'll be hearing from her in a few minutes, but first I'll give a brief overview of our project. So as you see on this slide, the purpose of this project, our project is anticipated to serve 210 individuals, both men and women, who are serving a sentence in our county jail and assessed at medium or high risk of reoffending. The purpose of this project is to reduce recidivism for participants and also to improve critical outcomes for their children, including reduced child welfare involvement and juvenile justice involvement. We have three overarching goals for this project. The first, as you see on this slide, is to increase family well-being and decrease child protective service involvement. We want participants to improve their understanding of child development, nonviolent discipline techniques, and parenting skills, along with increasing their problem-solving skills. We also want to ensure that families are connected to any needed resources or supports during their parents' incarceration. Our second goal is to increase the child's well-being and decrease juvenile justice involvement by helping families maintain connections to the incarcerated parent and ensuring that the children have the supports needed to address the trauma of parental incarceration. And last but not least, our third goal is to reduce recidivism and incidents of violent crime by the incarcerated parents after release. Participants complete a reentry service plan to address criminogenic needs and receive supports to assist with reintegration back into the family upon release. Under the grant, staff provide evidence-based parenting curriculum inside the jail to incarcerated parents. Participants in the classes typically participate in coached phone calls and contact visits. The grant also expanded family communication by allowing video visitation between the families participating, with them being located at Pittsburgh Mercy's community location and the incarcerated parent in the jail. So that video visitation between those two places. This is not at all intended to replace the in-person visits, but to offer additional opportunities for contact throughout the month, and also to allow families who may have barriers that prevent them from participating in contact visits, such as work schedules, a different mechanism to visit as well. The opportunities for contact and communication have been adapted due to COVID protocols, as in-person visitation is still restricted. And Amy will talk more in a minute about how we're leveraging technology to expand and enhance family communication while those health and safety protocols are still in place. Staff in the program strongly encourage contact between the incarcerated parents and children. They work with the families to help them understand what contact's available and how they can access those opportunities. When contact visits are available, they assist the family and children in understanding the process and coach them through the transitions at the beginning and end of the visit and provide support during the visit as well. They also work with families to overcome any barriers to transportation, such as transportation limitations. And when it is time for the incarcerated parent to transition back home, staff provides support through that process as well. Another key component of this grant project is supporting children in the community. Family support specialists complete an assessment with enrolled families using the Family Advocacy and Support Tool, also known as the FAST, to identify areas where support could benefit the family and also areas of strength that could be built upon when working with the family. They then connect the families with appropriate supports and resources in the community. We really want to ensure that families are as stable as possible when the incarcerated parent is released and ready to reintegrate with their family to support that transition. Community activities are also provided to allow opportunity for engagement with peers who may be experiencing some of the same challenges. This setting also allows additional opportunities for staff to engage with the family and provide supports. So that's a quick overview of our project. I'll hand it over to Amy Kroll now to talk more about our program eligibility and how technology is being used to support this project.
Good afternoon. I'm in Allegheny County Jail right now, so just in case you may hear Mike's overhead going off, I wanted to let you all know. So the individuals, and to give you a little bit of background, our jail is considered a large jail on the eastern seaboard. We currently have about 1,700 in our jail, but it's a revolving door. People can be here up to 48 hours, or they can be here 2 years less 2 days. Otherwise, they go to our State Department of Corrections. So those individuals that are deemed eligible for our program are considered high and medium risk of reoffending. They're usually sentenced, and they have to be here in the jail longer than 90 days so that we can engage with them. And also, they will be released on probation or parole. And then about 2 years ago, we opened it up for individuals that are here on minor charges and that have multiple detainers to other judges. Also, to be eligible for the program, you have to be a parent of a child under the age of 18 and or a caregiver. Because the nucleus of everybody's family is very different, the program was opened to parents that may not be the biological parent of that child, but for most of them, since their birth or since they were younger, they have been raising these children. Also, you have to be returning to Allegheny County or a resident of Allegheny County, and there were no minimum education requirements for this program. So once individuals enrolled in the program and began to take our parenting classes so that we could get to know them better, and we learned more about their children. One of the main things that we began to use was coached phone calls. This phone call is very different from a normal phone call in that the phone calls were not recorded, and all the other phone calls in our jails are recorded. This phone call had 2 handsets to it so that our family support specialist and the parent that was incarcerated would then be talking literally and listening at the same time to the caregivers at home and the children. And we found that a lot of our, clients here had not really talked to their children. And so when they were in here and had time available and weren't in the streets talking to their children, they found that they were having difficulty. So through these coached phone calls, we were able to make real connection with the caregivers and the children at home. The other way we did it was expanding our visits. In the very beginning, we had window visits or glass visits. And through slow baby steps, we were finally able to give contact visits to our parents that had graduated out of their parenting classes and had made coached phone calls home, and those phone calls had gone very well. So in that case, sometimes, the parents didn't really want to, talk. So we were able, through our staff in the communities, to transport the families to Mercy, to a very conducive room that they then could, we could offer them video visits with their incarcerated parent who was in the reentry center of the jail. And so that was able to, we were providing options to the parents. Not everybody was available. Sometimes children would come home from school at later hours, and the parents in here really wanted to see their children. So that was always an option, the virtual coached visits. The next use I'd like to go into more is about a lot of the technology. In October of 2020, every inmate in Allegheny County Jail now receives a tablet that they use to make phone calls and video visits. The good and bad about this is a fee is charged, and as we all know, those fees can be very absorbent, very, very high. So the our oversight board, and again, this was in the COVID, in our epidemic, they decided to be able to draw the families closer together and to maintain their connections, especially since during COVID we had no longer window visits, no longer contact visits, and it was such an incredible burden to the family and the children. They then would add to everybody's tablet $50 a month free for that individual to remain in contact with their their children and their family. And it's been incredible. I mean, that has been happening since January. We have had 4 solid months of individuals getting $50 free on their account to be able to remain in contact with their family. So the program, has really worked toward the process of coached phone calls and visits using the tablets, and, at no cost to the individuals or the families, which was huge. Again, once, COVID is hopefully out of the picture soon, we will resume contact visits, but we are going to continue to use our tablet visits so that it is extra increased opportunities to have families connect with their children. Some of the other, as the Oregon group said, we had to pivot and pretty much on a dime to get things running in our facility. So one of the things we did was, just as our children all over the United States were going to school, we did that here. And what we did was, very quickly, we got large screen TVs, we had laptops, we used the Teams platform, and our teachers, our instructors that were at home began to teach the inmates in the jail. We used our large gyms. We were able to socially distance everybody, And through Teams and the large screen TVs, they could easily just have a regular classroom. They could hear each other, they could ask questions, and facilitate a whole conversation in real time. And then one of the most exciting things was using the COVID-19 relief funds, we were able to purchase, all this equipment. We are a high rise, so we were able to get TVs, laptops, carts, speakers, and able to get it on every floor of our high rise. And we have 16 floors here in this high rise.
I can say that when we talk about the successes that we've had over this past year while working through these new technology pieces, none of them would have happened without flexibility, persistence, and advocacy. I am personally very appreciative that we had Amy on the ground in the facility advocating for our program participants every chance that she had. When there was a no, she took it as a not yet, and she went back time and time again until we were able to move forward. She really worked to identify what those barriers were, and she continues to do so as we are continuing to work to offer more opportunities for communication and support. We have more than we had, at this time last year, but we want more. We want to keep moving in that direction and offer every opportunity that we can.
One of the other lessons that I've learned in my super many years in corrections is just always try to keep moving in a positive direction. In the very beginning, they were like, my administration looked at me like I had 6 heads when I said I'd like to do a contact visit in Allegheny County Jail. And their first response was, we've never done contact visits in our jail. And, through the first year of doing the classes and then doing the coached phone calls home, I finally convinced administration to allow me to do 2 contact visits with 2 different families on the floor of our contact visiting room with rugs and toys, and they must have had 15 correctional officers watching the visit, thinking somehow something would go on. But the visit went on, and then soon it bloomed into Saturdays with 30 contact visits. So, either through using technology or through using persistence, but also killing with kindness. The correctional lens is tough. We all know it's tough, but through example and, trying to anticipate barriers and work through them, showing that it's always something positive that will then be flowing over in our communities. But I think this has been a super, super positive program for the county of for our residents of Allegheny County.
I agree. And I think what Amy said about using that correction lens is so important. Like when you're planning human services in a correctional facility, is making sure you have somebody at the table that is able to look through that lens and really help you work through those barriers. In the planning stage, it'll just save you a whole lot of heartache when you get further down the road and realize you're going to have to face those battles anyway. So we are so grateful to have Amy at our table and doing that and kind of leading the charge inside the facility. I think that's it, and we'll punt it back to Val now. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share our experiences.
Thank you so much to Allegheny County. Again, phenomenal work going on. Thank you very much to actually all of our presenters today. You're really leading the way to show how a pandemic is not going to hold you back. People telling you no, we're not going to hold you back, and there are things that we could do. That's what's right for families. So thank you for all that you do. To see the full Reentry Week schedule of events and links and resources, please visit the National Reentry Resource Center at www.nationalreentryresourcecenter.org. Also, join in the conversation on social media platforms like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Hashtag Reentry Matters, hashtag Reentry Week, and hashtag Reentry Week 21. I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. And don't forget to sign up for the National Reentry Resource Center newsletter. And if you have any questions, please reach out to the NRC via email. Now, I will turn it over to my colleague, Erica Nelson, who will facilitate our question and answer session. Please feel free to put any questions in the chat box. Thank you.